Today, we're going to talk about solving radical equations and inequalities. Who remembers what a radical is? Yeah, it's a root. Square root, cube root, fourth root, those are radicals. Okay, and we're going to solve radicals. For example, we're going to be solving equations dealing with radicals. Okay, first off, let's think about back to, we'll do this back in like chapter 1, 2. If I give you a problem, x squared equals 25, and I said to solve that, what undoes a squared term? So when I do the square root of 25, and what would my answer be here? Ooh, so close.
Oh, I mean 5i. Wait.
Plus or minus 5. If it was negative, it'd be I. Okay, but plus or minus 5, right? Because you include positive and negative. Great. Here's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at kind of the opposite way of that. So that's going to be solve radical equations by raising both sides of the equation to the power of the index of the radical. All right. For example, here I have the square root of x equals 3. Well, what undoes a squared term or a square root? A squared term. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to square both sides. Again, if you look here, that's what we're going to do. You're going to square. If I have a square root, I'm going to square both sides. Well, what happens to my square and my square root? Cancel out. And then I get 3 squared. What's 3 squared?
9.
I get x equals 9. There's my answer. Okay? But then I'm also going to get problems like this. A little bit tougher. I have 3 square root of x minus 2 equals 18. Now my goal is I want to get the square root alone first. So if I were to get the square root alone first, I would need to divide both sides by 3. So notice I divide both sides by 3. That gets me now the square root of x minus 2 equals 6. What undoes a square root? Squared term. Square both sides. I get x minus 2 equals 36. Add 2 to the other side, we get x equals 38. Okay. How's it looking so far? Turn that frown upside down. It's all right. Number 1, solve each equation. Check your answer. So I have 4 cube root of 2x plus 11 equals 12. Now notice I want to get the radical alone first. What would I need to do to both sides to get the radical alone? I need to divide both sides by 4. So I need to get rid of that 4 out in front. Cancels. I get cube root of 2x plus 11 equals 3. Now what's the opposite of a cube root? A cube term. So notice I cube both sides. Cancels. Giving me 2x plus 11 equals 3 to the third is? 27. So I have 2x plus 11 equals 27. Now I need to solve. What am I going to do to both sides here first? Subtract 11. 2x equals 16. Divide both sides by?
2, 8.
I get x equals 8. There it is. And then could I plug that back in to solve? You bet. 2 times 8 is 16. 16 plus 11 is 27. Cube root of 27 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. Checks out. Now 2. Again, first off, I always want to get my radical alone first. So how am I going to move the 5 to the other side? I'm going to have to subtract it. So I have the square root of x minus 3 equals, what's 9 minus 5? 4. So the square root of x minus 3 equals 4. What undoes the square root? Somebody say it, yeah? Square. Square both sides. Cancels. X minus 3 equals, what's 4 times 2? Or 4 squared, sorry. 16. Next I'm going to add 3. X equals 19. And again, I can plug that in and get the same thing. Number 3. Notice I have a 2 out front and I want to get the radical alone. What would I have to do to get the radical alone? I need to divide. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Cancels. Square root of x plus 4 equals 5. What's the opposite of a square root? Square term. X plus 4 equals 25.
Why? Oh, I see.
5 squared. Subtract both sides by 4. And I get x equals 21.
Wait, can you not switch it?
And there we go. All right, so the next set of problems here. Now, this gets a little bit tough. This is about as tough as it's going to get today. You can solve equations with rational exponents is similar to solving radical equations. For example, what's the same thing as a 1/2 power?
2.
A square root. Yeah. So this is the same thing as saying x equals the square root of x plus 20. Now, what undoes a square root? A square term. So I square both sides, right? What happens when I square both sides, I'm left with this right here. X squared equals x plus 20. I have a quadratic. Whenever I have a quadratic, I always want to set it equal to what?
0.
I always want to set it equal to 0. Why? Because then I can factor. So I factor that. What multiplies to get negative 20? Adds to get negative 1. Well, that's 4 and negative 5. So I factor that down. That gets me x equals negative 4, x equals 5. And then I can plug that back in to check for what are called extraneous solutions. Okay?
It can only be
So in extraneous solutions here, for example, shows basically that some solutions don't work. Okay? Do you have a question?
No.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. It can only be one answer, right? Like, it can't have.
Next one, number 4. Solve each equation. So I have 5x plus 6 to the 1/4 power equals 3. Okay? So what's the same thing as a 1/4 power? Not a square root, but a 4th root. Because the 1/4 power, it's the same thing as a 4th root. So that's like saying the 4th root of 5x plus 6 equals 3. And what undoes a 4th root? A 4th power. So I take 4th power to both sides. That cancels out, giving me 5x plus 6 equals, what's 3 to the 4th power? What'd you say? 81. Now I solve, subtract 6 to both sides. 5x equals 75. Divide both sides by 5, and you get x equals 15. All right. Number 5. 6x minus 8 to the 1/3 power equals 4. What's the same thing as a 1/3 power? Cube root. So I have cube root of 6x minus 8 equals 4. What's the opposite of a cube root? 3rd power. 6x minus 8 equals, what's 4 to the 3rd?
It would be 64.
64. Add 8 to the other side. 6x equals
Where do you
72.
get 60? Oh, wait.
Divide both sides by 6. 72 divided by 6 gets me x equals 12. Nice job. And the last one, number 6 here. What's the same thing as a 1/2 power?
Square root.
So really this is x equals the square root of x plus 6. What's the opposite of a square root?
Square triangle.
So again, what's the opposite, or what's opposite of a square root?
Square triangle.
So I squared. I get x squared equals x plus 6. I have a quadratic now. When I have a quadratic, I always want to set equal to what? 0. So I subtract x, subtract 6 over. X squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. Now I need to factor. So what multiplies to get negative 6 adds to get negative 1. X minus 3 and x plus 2 equals 0. So I solve it. When I do that, I'm going to get answer of x equals what? 3 or x equals negative 2. Nice job. Good work. Take a couple seconds to try these last 4 on your own. Number 7, walk me through it. Jace, what'd you do first?
I squared it.
So those cancel out. You get x plus 2 equals 25, is that right?
Yeah.
So what's x going to have to equal?
What?
So what's x going to have to equal?
X equals 23.
Nice job. Number 8, what's the same thing as a half power, Joe Daniels?
Square root.
Yeah, so really this is just the square root of 4x equals 6. We're going to do to both sides, Joe? Square them. I have 4x equals 36. What's x going to equal? Number 9, Chaz. What undoes the square root?
Squaring the 8.
So I get 3x plus 1 is greater than or equal to 64. Subtract 1, divide by 3. What do you get for an answer there, Drew?
21.
X is greater than or equal to 21. Nice job. And 10. X plus 1 to the 1/3 power equals 3. What's the same thing as a 1/3 power, King?
Third power?
Cube root. So you say x plus 1 equals 3. What undoes a cube root then, Jake? What'd you say?
Third power.
Third power. So you get x plus 1 equals 27. And what's x going to have to equal, King?
26.
26. There you go. Here's your assignment.